hearing comments, suggestions, particularly for solutions to the problem. By way of introduction, in the center of the head table tonight, we have His Excellency, Mr. Andrew Murdoch. To his right is the Honorable Minister of National Security, Honorable Michael Weeks. And to the Governor's left is Mr. Darrin Simons, the Commissioner of Police. I am Lieutenant Colonel Eddie Lamb, the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of National Security. So for an outline for this evening, His Excellency will open up with his remarks, followed by remarks from Minister Weeks, and then followed by a presentation by the Commissioner of Police. And following that presentation is the part where you get to participate, where we will have open discussion for comments, questions, and solutions. Just some points for this evening. The restroom is out this door, double door, up the ramp, and the sharp left at the top of the ramp. Tonight's event is being live streamed and will be recorded. And if you speak tonight but don't wish to be recorded later on or included in the recording, see me afterwards privately and I'll take your name and we can omit you from that recording. There are mics available on either side of the auditorium. If you wish to speak, please line up between a mic and I shall indicate and alternate between the mics as we proceed this evening. Now, the emphasis tonight, as I said, is on the solutions. We all know what the problem is. We all know what has caused the problem. So the aim of these town halls is to invite people to come together in order to provide recommendations, ideas, suggestions on how we can heal our community. When speaking, please be respectful. We are all here for the benefit and betterment of our entire country, and we have to demonstrate that which we expect to be replicated. Your questions and comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and I will use my discretion as to whether or not I allow you more time if you're making valid comments and valid suggestions. At this point, I will invite you to put your phones on silent or vibrate so as to minimize distractions for this evening. Now, we're aiming to be out of here by daybreak, so by 8 p.m. or shortly thereafter. And I shall be timing you when you stand to speak, and I reserve the right to invite you to conclude your comments. At this junction, if there are no questions, I'm going to open it up now to His Excellency the Governor for his comments. Your Excellency.
Good evening, everyone. So welcome to this third town hall. Sure. Is that better? Excellent. So this third town hall, the intention is to know that we had one in centre, out east, and now obviously leaving, I can't say the best to last, can I? I've got to be neutral, out here to finish the series. And as you've heard from the PS, this is very much a dialogue. You will get some presentations, mine will be short, and then you'll hear obviously from the Minister and the Commissioner as well. Some of that's to transmit some information to you to help inform the discussion. But the important bit, as far as we're really concerned, is we know what's in our heads already. It's really to hear from you. So why are we all here, the three of us lined up? You've got myself, obviously the Minister, and the Commissioner, but between the three of us, whether it's direct constitutional authority that's provided under the Constitution for the Governor over internal security or police, some of that's been delegated through to the Minister and his ministry, some of which are the decisions of those of a government, and of course with the police you have the operational responsibility for policing. So between all three of us, we are responsible for policing and internal security as a whole. Obviously there can be support from the UK, but on Ireland, this is it. And so I think it's right and proper that those responsible are accountable. And one of the things that we can have tonight is you can ask us questions as much as you contribute your views too, and I'd very much encourage you to do that. That we've had 3 Governors' Council over the last few months. These are mechanisms by which we can meet together as a group to discuss things that are essentially within the governor's primary or special responsibilities, including, as you know, policing. It's cross-governmental, so the Premier is there and various ministers, obviously including the Minister for National Security, as well as the police, customs, and the Director for Public Prosecutions. And I can assure you, the sentiment in the room is one, again, of solutions. It's one of informing and action. And within the dynamic in that room, I can also give you my assurance that we are of one mind and one page in terms of dealing with the problem and doing what's necessary to do so. So to give you a sense of some of the things we've been talking about, and you'll hear a lot more about that this evening. So from the policing side, a number of measures to increase the size of the force through accelerated recruitment to get the right people on the island to do more of what the police need to do. And you'll hear more from the Commissioner what that actually means in practice. Some of that is technical expertise, whether it's for a temporary period while those recruitments take place. Other things about equipment and resourcing, some of it's in the covert space, other not, to make sure they can able to make the best use of their officers to deal with the problems. We had the Collector of Customs in the room too, looking at what measures we can take to improve border security, to make sure that we improve the tracking and interception of things that are dangerous coming into the island from sea and air, and a number of positive measures to improve not just the people and numbers, but also about the technology to react to how those who want to bring things in can react to those and discover them. There's also really healthy discussions about legislation, what new laws could be passed to help within the whole criminal justice system. Some of that might be new offences, and you'll hear a little bit from the Commissioner on new offences on prohibited weapons. Things are inherently dangerous, and there's no good reason for them to be here. And some of that you will also hear as well about ideas, whether it's for including measures about bail, looking at how do you protect witnesses. So you'll hear, and I'm sure that's stealing the Commissioner's thunder, I think there's 47 cold cases. Cold cases is a murder cases in Bermuda, unsolved, some of them a lot longer than others. And in some cases, having spoken to those responsible for leading the investigation, people know what happened, and they could, if they decide to do so, give evidence to help a prosecution, but they are afraid to do so. Various reasons for why they are afraid, and there are steps that can be taken within the courts and other ways to help give people the assurance that they'll be anonymous in those proceedings and feel protected in order to say what they need to say and help bring those to justice and find some level of accountability. But there are a number of other measures that could be taken, and all these will be put before Cabinet for them to take a view as to those efforts. So what's my takeaway? I haven't been here a year. You've obviously been here a lot longer. So my takeaways are, we're not going to police our way out of the problem. So it's important you hear from the police. They often react to crimes. They will investigate them, and they will do what they can to bring people to justice. They can act as a deterrent, and obviously they cannot be everywhere at the same time, but they can look at tactics and operations to deter criminal activity, and if it takes place, investigate and bring those to justice who have taken part. And they can do a better job of doing that. I don't think anyone in the police would think they're at the optimum level of where they need to be right now. And so there is things that can be done to improve the police in their people and what they do, and you'll hear more about that. But in the discussion in Governor's Council as well, yes, we can change the laws. That's important, potentially, depending on, as I say, it's for the government to take those forward. So you can look at that in terms of the kind of the back end of the problem, putting people into prison, looking at their rehabilitation programs for how they can be better citizens on the way out. But the really important thing that was also subject to good discussion was, how do you give choices to people who are making choices at the moment to go into this lifestyle, making the choices that it's the right thing for them to do to pick up a gun and use it against somebody else, to make choices to get involved, whether it's in gang culture, whether it's involved in drugs or other illegal activity. These are active choices that people are making, and they're becoming increasingly young. That is a trend that, the benefit of coming in new is you can look at the history and look at the stats and look at the data, and it tells you a very clear picture. And that is happening here. So a really important discussion I think I'd very much encourage is, for those young people who are making those decisions, what can we do to give them a better alternative? And I don't think there's one solution for that. There's multiple. And once, whether it's academia and employment activities, or, how do you help the family, how do you help the home, all of these things are important. And I think you are better placed than others to contribute to that type of discussion as much as what your views are policing and the other systems. So do give your views on that. So ideas, thoughts, solutions, absolutely. But also recognizing this is a collective effort. It's not going to be done by Government House. It's not going to be done by the minister and his ministry. It's not going to be done by police. It's not going to be done alone by the community, but it will be done by all of those acting together. And that's why your voices and your views are really important. So I very much look forward to hearing them tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge the Acting Premier, Mr. Sandy Silva, the Minister of Health, I think she's here also, and my other MP colleagues. Welcome all. Let me start by thanking the residents, the parents, the educators, and community leaders for coming out once again to be a part of this ongoing national conversation. This is the third meeting in our series of community town halls on violence, and I want to acknowledge something that stands out at every single one of them. The turnout, the passion, and the ideas shared at each of these meetings show that Bermudians care deeply about their communities and our young people. What we are doing here, coming together to talk honestly, to share ideas, to hold each other accountable, is exactly how real change begins. Your presence here stands a strong message that we are ready to face this challenge together. So again, I thank you for being willing to come forward and be a part of the solution. Over the past few weeks, we've heard from parents who are afraid, from young men who feel trapped, from pastors, teachers, and neighbors who refuse to give up hope. We have listened and we have acted. Our discussions in St. George's and the central parishes help shape how we think about this issue, not just a policing challenge, but as a national one that cuts across socio-economic barriers, education, employment, health, and family life. So tonight, I want to emphasize one key message. The fight against gang and violent behavior is not the responsibility of the Ministry of National Security alone. It requires an all-of-government and all-of-community approach. That's why we have been working in close collaboration with other ministries. With the Ministry of Education, to strengthen life skills and emotional resilience, programs in our schools, giving our students tools to manage conflict, make better choices, and see a future beyond the gangs. With the Ministry of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors, to support our community clubs, after-school initiatives, and mentorship programs that provide safe spaces for our young people. With the Ministry of Economy and Labor, to expand training, apprenticeships, and job opportunities, because we know that employment is one of the strongest deterrents to crime. With the Ministry of Health, to ensure that mental health and trauma support are available for families and individuals impacted by violence. This level of coordination is about breaking down silos, because if we want to prevent violence, we must address the social, emotional, and economic issues that fuel it. But I stress that government alone cannot do it. We need the community. We need you as partners in this effort. Our community and sporting clubs, our churches, and our neighborhood organizations all have a vital role to play. We have seen firsthand that when communities are organized and united, violence decreases and hope grows. Every conversation you have with a young person, every time you volunteer, every time you choose to get involved, you are helping to shift the culture. We cannot, and I stress, we cannot arrest our way out of this problem. But we can educate, we can employ, and we can empower our way out of it. But we must do this together. Tonight's meeting is not just about talking, it's about building solutions that work. I know that many of you have strong views, constructive criticism, and new ideas, and I welcome that. Your feedback helps us make better policy and better decisions. Our goal is simple but vital: to ensure that Bermuda becomes a place where our young people feel valued, protected, and hopeful, and where violence has no place in our homes, our schools, or on our streets. So I thank you all again for being here tonight. Thank you for caring. Thank you for refusing to give up on our young people and our country. Together, through collaboration, compassion, and community leadership, we can and we will make a difference. This is our community, and we will move it forward together. Thank you, and I welcome any questions when it's question time.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Your Excellency. And good evening, all. Excellent. I'm going to start off this evening just talking a little bit about the amnesty that we are going to be starting, which effectively or officially kicks off tomorrow. You would have seen some reporting in the Royal Gazette today, some pictures of some of the items that we're looking to get off the streets. And so for a month, starting tomorrow, ending the 17th of December, we're having an amnesty around prohibited weapons. So basically, as it stands right now, there are 11 prohibited weapons on the prohibited weapon list. And these are items, many of them are knives, they're some of the new ones are what we call like a zombie knife, brass knuckles, concealed knives, cyclone knives, butterfly knives, flick knives. These are all basically articles that no individual would reasonably have in their possession. And certainly we don't want to see them sold in Bermuda. We don't want to see people possessing them in Bermuda. So they are being made illegal. Prohibited is the word that we use. And you're not allowed to possess, carry, sell, be concerned in selling those items. Now, before we make the 8 new ones unlawful, and full descriptions are in the newspaper and will be in tomorrow's media also. Before we make them illegal, we want to give people a chance to hand them in the event that you have them. And you can see we've got, we're calling it an amnesty bin, and we're going to have in 6 locations throughout the island. 3 of them are going to be at the police stations. 2 of them are at the Gorham stores, east or central and west, and the other one is at Warwick Camp. So those are the 6 locations that we're going to start with. We're going to make an assessment a week in to see, do we need other locations, or would other locations be beneficial? And we may announce some other location as time goes on. But we're going to start with the 6 that we have. And I would encourage you to encourage anyone that you know to think about, do I have any of these items in my possession, and encourage people to hand them over in the amnesty bins. And a key important part about the amnesty, is that there will be no prosecution for the possession of them. So you can appreciate that 11 of them are already illegal, and all of them, it would be illegal to have them in a public place. But this amnesty is going to allow you to go from, let's say, your home to the amnesty bin to drop off the items, and there would be no prosecution for having them on that at that moment in time. And obviously that's been agreed with the Director of Public Prosecutions, Madam Clark. She has agreed that she will not be prosecuting individuals for the possession of those items. What has been asked at other town hall meetings is, what if those items were used previously in a commission of a crime? Well, the reality is those crimes are still going to be investigated, and if we have sufficient evidence, individuals would be prosecuted for the crimes that arise out of the criminal use of those items. So, people could reasonably expect that. But for the possession of the item, to hand it over in one of the amnesty bins, there is an amnesty for that. All right, I'm going to just go over a little bit or share a little bit of information with you, and bearing in mind that these town halls kind of really started as a result of 3 kind of significant incidents. We had the 2 on Court Street and the shooting at Legends Bar. So that really did cause some concern and fear in the community. And as a result, or somewhat in response to that, these town halls came about. So this is now the 3rd one over some period of time, and I'm really sort of going over the information that I've presented before, but giving a new audience an opportunity to hear kind of what the police are doing in response to that. So basically, one of the main things that the police have done in response to the somewhat of an uptick in incidents is we've stood up something called Operational Sentinel. You can just read some of the points on that PowerPoint there. Not sort of mentioned there is that Operational Sentinel, basically we took about a group of 20 officers, and we dedicate them day in and day out to focusing on targeting gang nominals. So these are some of the highest harm causers in the land, and we have a very focused effort. Our efforts are intelligence led. These group of about 20 officers have come from throughout the organization. And we're really focused on disrupting plan activity. We put these individuals where we know gang nominals are. I mean, we say gang nominals, gang members, people who are, connected to gangs, who associate with gangs and do the bidding of gang members. So we put them in areas where they are. We put them in areas where we know they are trafficking drugs. We put them in areas where we know that these are the police officers, in areas where we know that they are likely to use routes to travel back and forth, and we specifically target around traffic violations. Operational Sentinel is subject of daily reviews, and I think importantly, just to communicate how important this is to us, it's led by an assistant commissioner of crime, that is not the norm in terms of leading operations. But because of the acuteness of this issue, this is led by an assistant commissioner. Now, you may have heard in the news something called 315F. right? It's been around for many, many, many years. And 315F is the police power to stop and search individuals in the anticipation of violence. Now, we tend to be quite, although the power is quite broad, we tend to be very targeted in the use of that. So we know where people are gang nominals are likely to be. We know what gang nominals, the areas that they frequent. We know the sources of tension very often. So we're putting police officers in those areas to target and patrol. Since Operational Sentinel was stood up, we've made, actually that number's a little bit bigger than 108. It's probably up to around 120 arrests, including warrants. For that period, in terms of success or outcomes of that operation, we've done about 15 warrants. So this is like, where we're entering a home, where we're either searching for guns, drugs, ammunition, and we have recovered substantial amounts of drugs and cash. And I think particularly notable, we've recovered 4 firearms and about 15 rounds of ammunition as a result of spinning up Operation Sentinel. There's nothing, the name is just a name. We give operations, names. People look in the dictionary and they just pick a list of names for that year and they're run sequentially. So Sentinel has nothing to do with anything, quite frankly. All right, one of the things that people don't often make a connection to is moving violation tickets or traffic enforcement. So we do a lot of traffic enforcement around gang nominals. Obviously, we have the rule of law, right? So we just can't arrest people willy-nilly. We have to have reasonable cause, reasonable grounds to suspect that people have committed, an offense has been committed and that individual has committed it. But one of the things tools that we also use is traffic enforcement, targeted traffic enforcement in the areas where we know gang nominals travel. And it just helps us to get a little bit of a control. You'd be surprised how many of these individuals don't have driver's license. And what's interesting is, on one hand, sometimes we are going to be ticketing you for, let's say, no driver's license, a gang nominal. And then at the same time, we actually might be putting a little bit of energy in a conversation about, look, you could do this a little bit differently. Maybe we'll work with you and we'll help you. Why don't you have a driver's license? Why, because we're trying to build relationships at the same time. Because at the end of the day, we don't really want to be locking everybody up. We want behaviors to stop and change. So sometimes, it's an enforcement activity, and then on the back of that, it could be, some conversations about you really need to do things a little bit differently. We're in the West, so you may not be aware or may not see it, but we have significantly increased the amount of patrols we have in North Hamilton in particular. North Hamilton has been a seat of tension for a number of years now. A number of shootings have occurred in that area, and we are actually, because our staffing numbers are quite low, much of that extra patrol is on overtime, but it's obviously that important, and it helps to, our presence, we know, helps to bring calm. It brings calm to a situation. So we put a particular effort around patrolling North Hamilton. And we've made a number of arrests in those 3 significant firearms incidents that I referred to. It goes without saying, but it bears repeating that we need the community's assistance. We need community information. Now, perhaps the people that I'm speaking to here tonight aren't the ones that have the information that we need, but you'd be surprised if you happen to be in and around the areas where these negative incidents occur. The little observations that you might make, I saw a vehicle, I saw an individual, that can be particularly helpful. But we also need just, real information about who's connected to who may have been involved in a particular crime. That's how crimes are really solved. Unfortunately, we see a lot of TV, and crimes are solved in a 45-minute TV show through forensics alone. Let me tell you, if it was that easy, we'd be a lot further ahead. As the governor mentioned, we have about 47 unsolved murders, going back over a number of years. But I am convinced, I know, that every single murder could possibly be solved if more people came forward. Now, yes, forensics are important. Yes, CCTV is important and is effective. But ultimately, it's members of the community that solve these crimes, or that give us the information to solve these crimes. And so I'm mentioning to you, I'm asking you, I'm appealing to you to assist us, have conversations with colleagues, friends, family about assisting the police. So we mentioned Operational Sentinel, and I've mentioned the fact that our staffing levels are quite low. I'm going to speak to those specific numbers in a minute. But one of the things that we've been able to do, arising out of the Governor's Council and all coming together, is that we have received some assistance from the UK in the form of a financial contribution to the tune of about £750,000 the UK government have given, that we plan to use to bring in about 9 individuals to assist us, to help bring our numbers up. And that's going to be in the form of 4 serious crime investigators, 3 crime analysts, 2 financial crime investigators, some additional covert equipment, and I'm also not part of the £750,000, but I'm also exploring some boots on the ground options from some of our overseas or partners to the police organizations in the Caribbean. Can't say too much about that right now. It's still an ongoing discussions, but definitely before Christmas, we will see many, if not all, of this additional assistance in the form of the serious crime investigators, crime analysts, and financial crime investigators. As a bit of it always comes up, and so I'm also just going to give you a few bits of information around CCTV, because it came up. It does come up. So we've got about 136 sites that are working today. There's a further approximate 21 sites that are going to be installed, and this is phase 2 of the program. So phase 1 of the CCTV program is complete, but we're going to be bringing some additionals. We have 460 views online, and I use the word views because sometimes in one camera you can have 4 different cameras inside, so you can't just say a camera. So it's views. We have 460 views online, and when we're fully complete, we're going to have about 560. Some people have asked, how relevant or effective or is the CCTV? So we've had, that number has actually gone up. We've had about 400 requests for footage. The vast majority of those, the overwhelming vast majority of those are internal. So they're police officers that are involved in investigating crime, and they have written to the CCTV department, hey, do you have any CCTV that covers this period, this location? It would be helpful for my investigation. The overwhelming majority of those have been complete. And it was very much a part of the news, the most recent murder on Court Street, that there was cameras right at that junction. That murder happened, I think it was around 4:45, and those cameras literally came online about 5:10, 5:15. It was planned, it was all scheduled to happen that during day. It was just unfortunate that they weren't able to capture right at that location. However, like I said, we've got 460 views online, and we were able to capture about 20 minutes of footage relative to that incident. And obviously, without going into it a lot of detail, I can tell you that has contributed to recovering substantial evidence and contributed to be able to making an arrest in there. And so I just highlight that CCTV and the investment in CCTV is working. LPR, license plate recognition, we've got about 12 of them that are active right now. That's so that we'll be able to know that a vehicle went through that location at that particular point in time. You've heard the news that we are going to be doing some speed cameras. There are about 28 different speed sites that are planned, and that should probably be coming online, I'm going to say, towards the end of summer in 2026. All right, So I know we talk an awful lot, or what preoccupies our minds, and rightly so, what preoccupies our minds is the violent crime. But what people often don't realize is that Bermuda, in terms of all crime, is really at we're not all-time low today. I can't say that exactly, but we are at some of the lowest all crime, since the top of that chart with the highest part, over 6,000 crimes a year, is in 2000. And you can see the bottom of that chart at its lowest is 2024. That's the very top line. I don't know if that's not working. The very top line is the all crime line, right? The line below it is why we have experienced the decline. So growing up, many of you would remember all kinds of stealing, breaking and entering. We're just not experiencing that level of crime, or those types of crimes. We call it crimes against property, to the degree we were, let's say, go back into the 2000s. Unfortunately, we looked at two bottom lines. That is crimes against property and crimes against the community and crimes against the person. And you can see those lines, for all intents and purposes, are really flat. So there's not been a significant change in the amount of crimes against the person. Now, we would clearly say that the nature of that crime has changed since the 2000s. We're now experiencing where there are many more murders. The highest amount of murders I think we've had in any single year is 8, and we've hit that number at least twice. But the total amount of crimes against person has stayed relatively the same over the years in terms of counting the numbers of index. Now, in the next year or so, we're going to be introducing something called harm index, because not every crime is the same. So if you count, a murder, let's say, the same as you do a minor assault, it's 1 and 1, it doesn't really convey how much harm is being done. So from a statistical reporting perspective, we want to introduce information around the amount of harm that's being done, and we call that the harm index. All right, so looking at firearms fatalities and injuries, I know this is a very busy graph. The points that I want to make, or the points that I want you to take home, are really obvious just by looking at the picture, not all the detail. So the very top line, which is I think blue in color, is the amount of what we call confirmed firearms incidents. And that absolute really high peak is in 2010. So in 2000, you can see, an escalation from very little in 2008 in terms of firearms incidents to a just, very significant peak, over 50, maybe near 55 firearms incidents in 2010. And those firearms incidents, when I say confirmed firearms incidents, we get, if I had to put unconfirmed on top of that, it would almost be double. So confirmed firearms incidents is when we just absolutely know a firearm is used. So we've gone to the scene and we've recovered shell casings, or somebody was injured with the firearm. So there's no question that a firearm was discharged. So in 2010, we hit as high as 55, and you can see the number is going down. The other piece that I want to draw to your attention is the green line. Now, the green line is bladed weapon injuries. Hence the change in prohibited weapons, hence the increased focus around stop and search. So that line, you can see, is just, rapidly climbing up a hill. That is not the amount of incidents that the police have been called to. This is where metal has pierced skin. Somebody was injured as a result of a blade. And in 2023, this chart ends at 2024. I wanted to put whole years, because if I did 2025 not being complete, it just skews the graph. But you can see in 2023, we've got about almost 35 incidents, which is quite a lot, and it's quite a dramatic change. So attitudes towards the use of weapons would appear to have shifted, and that's one of the drivers for the change in prohibited weapons legislation, introducing the amnesty, trying to get some of these weapons off the streets, but also just from a pure enforcement perspective. Okay, just from some operational context. All right, for me, this is one of the biggest issues facing the Bermuda Police Service is just sheer numbers. When I joined this organization, there were 480 police officers. Today, we are at 300, that's actually slightly wrong, we're at 378, okay? So that's 100 odd officers less. In 2010, right, when you saw that firearms incident spike, we had 456 officers. If I had $1 for every member of the community that said, we don't see you, I'd be a very rich individual. And those aren't feelings. That is the reality. We are simply not as visible as we were going back in the 2000s and beyond and going back. So that is what we're putting a lot of effort into, is in recruiting, right? So we're constantly recruiting. And I would imagine that by the end of, probably the end of first quarter 2026, or just a little bit into the second quarter in 2026, we should be up around 420 officers, which is going to make a significant difference in terms of our visibility. We are fortunate in Bermuda that the community welcomes the police, which is not the same in every single community you go to. You see it on the news where the police are not, because they don't have as positive relationships as the Bermuda Police Service does. There are sometimes some very negative relationships between the police and the community. We've got work to do. Like the governor said, we haven't arrived, but we are in a good space, looking to even get better. When you talk about guns, blades, and collisions, I think it's just important to just have a little bit of, I get the question often about firearms. How many firearms are in circulation? Is Bermuda awash with firearms? And since 2021, there have been 69 firearms incidents. There have been 20 fatal and 35. Actually, that's not the point I want to make. Since 2014, right, we're talking about the numbers of firearms. Since 2014, year to date, there have been 88 unique firearms that the police have seen. And that is based on forensic data that would, just like, firearms kind of like have a fingerprint, the shell casings have a fingerprint. So we take all that information and we're able to identify 88 unique firearms. 31 of those firearms have been repeated. So we do often see a small group of firearms that are used over and over and over again. 42 of those 88 have been recovered, and 48 remain in circulation. Of note, the incident that happened, the murder of Ms. Miners on Court Street, that firearm actually was used in 13 other incidents. So the question about whether Bermuda is awash with firearms, the numbers are there, 88. 31 have been repeated. So what we have seen over the years is the repeated use of firearms. And very often, from a policing perspective, we can tell who may have, at early days, we can tell which gang may have been involved because we've made ballistic links. High-level overview, there are 11 active gangs in Bermuda. Nearly all firearms incidents are perpetuated by Bermudian gang-connected individuals. Now, so you're saying, Simons, why you even mention that? Because in other places, that's not the case. In other places, because many of our Caribbean neighbors, and indeed in many of the overseas territories, are experiencing some of the same challenges that we are. They have, their own, if you'd like, that are involved in criminality, but they also, because of where they are in the region, have very often influx of gangs, criminal individuals that are migrating from other places. Like, for example, Haiti is, for all intents and purposes, a failed state. And many of our other OTs and Caribbean nations have to deal with other people coming in and creating that violence. The overwhelming, I could almost say 100%, but I'm stopping short of that just in case I didn't remember one. All of the violence in our community is committed by us. Now that's, on one hand, very sad, but on another hand, there's an opportunity that not other places have. This is our own. These are our sons. So there's an opportunity there. So if any place had the opportunity to do things different, to have a different outcome, it's us. The reasons why the primary drivers for violence, we call it the 3 R's: respect, revenge, and revenue. That's what drives some of the violence. In the early days, if you all can remember 2005, 6, 7, a lot of this was, you heard about, and it was in the news, chain snatchings. Somebody snatched a chain, it would just, the police would be reporting out. And then, of course, one group snatches a chain, or a couple of individuals snatch a chain, and that just creates tension, and then it goes in this tit for tat kind of thing. Eventually, somebody started shooting, and then we're just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And you all remember the days 2010, 11, 12, Parkside, and 4-2. Those were the 2 main gangs that were connected. Gangs sustain themselves, which creates an opportunity around drug trafficking, acquisitive crime, acquisitive violent crime. Acquisitive crime is stealing, like they're acquiring things illegally. And they're often gang nominals against gang nominals. All right, I think that's going to be it for me. I think we're going to open it up for some questions. I don't know if you want me to send her, or are you going to moderate? Yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. This is the part in tonight's activities where you get to participate. So the mics are on either side. I welcome anyone to line up behind the mic, and I shall invite you to speak. And I shall be taking some notes for tonight as well. Sir? Mr. Luby, are you standing to speak?
Yes, I am.
I have a duty to remind you about the 3-minute rule, and also to remind you about the emphasis that we're here tonight for solutions. Sir?
Evening, all. Governor, evening. This might seem to be a little bit over the place, but there is a point, so just bear with me.
As long as you do it in 3 minutes.
No worries. Governor, when we as citizens go and sit down with our MPs and our ministers about different situations that we as citizens are dealing with in reference to governance problems in Bermuda, we are met with responses like, we have dropped the ball and whatever. There's no scenarios where we see these political entities actually finding the ball, picking it back up, and creating solutions for the issues that we in this community are facing. No one is supposed to be above the laws of this country. That includes those in governance. When we have a system where the head is not coordinated, there's chaos in the community. And that's what we've been experiencing through all this violence. There are many Bermudians that are in legal fights with the government over various issues. There are many Bermudians in judiciary fights that they cannot get access to deal with within these circles of justice. This system needs to be changed. The governance structure has always placed the needs of this population as afterthoughts, reactionary, no long-term social engineering vision. We know the solutions to these issues of violence because we've had literally decades of Townhall meetings, consultants being highly paid consultants being that taxpayers pay for to deliver all types of solutions to all different things. These solutions are put on a shelf somewhere, not implemented to the full extent. Decade after decade, the problems grow. The solutions that were meant to design to deal with the issues a decade before still haven't been implemented. 40 years ago, members of this community stood up, prophesized what today would be like. These individuals were laughed at. They were called names by our political officials. Oh, you guys are just voices in the wilderness, you know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. They have been proven right. Root causes. Previously,
you had 3 minutes,
like,
Mr. Luby.
pardon?
You're coming to an end shortly. You had 3 minutes.
Save the family structure. It's obliterated. So how do you have any chance of any real future if the family structures are just decimated? During the general election, a teacher spoke, the last general election, a teacher spoke at a town hall meeting. The meeting was being recorded. She had to ask the recording to be stopped so she could speak her experiences and other teachers' experiences about what they're seeing, warning signs within the middle school segment of the education system. I'm not going to go through everything she said, but the point that stood out to me was 60% of the middle school population apparently does not have the basic skills and are being advanced socially. So when these kids graduate, what real future do they have? Are they going to be part of the next generation of gangsters? My point in that is we need to depoliticize a lot of entity structures that exist on this island. Education, get rid of any ties to party politics. If your teachers who are dealing with your children the most during the day can't even speak to your community about what they see, how is anything supposed to be addressed? When young people don't see successful black men from their own walks of life, from their own communities, what options do they see for themselves?
Okay, Mr. Luby, you're at 5 minutes now. I'm going to invite you to
was my last point, and I appreciate the.
I see that.
And I
that
appreciate
doesn't mean
the,
no one else wishes to speak. I see that, bro.
Poverty. Generations. Bermudians have been earning below the poverty line that has not really been identified. We have now become this powerhouse, economic powerhouse for financial services, IB and everything. It is time for this population to take control of your governance system to the point where solutions to end poverty, such as a sovereign wealth fund that has no ties to anybody in government. This fund should be used to eradicate poverty in Bermuda. Pay Bermudians monthly dividends where they have the actual capital to do things instead of barely surviving. And I'll cut it short there. I appreciate the indulgence.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Luby.
Your Excellency, Commissioner Simons, and Minister Weeks. A lot of things I identify with. Paddy wagons. I remember growing up, you saw a paddy wagon just about everywhere. I think we need to have more paddy wagons, island-wide. I remember 16 years old, I used to be afraid to take my bike out just going to the movie at Rosebank because I was afraid that my bike would be taken away. I think we need more than that. You guys ever thought about collaborating with the buses? Cameras on the buses. 4 sides of the bus. When things happen.
Can I just interrupt you?
Yes.
Do the new buses they recently have cameras?
Yes, but they need to be liaison with the police.
Okay, gotcha.
Where the police can have control over visual looking at whatever happens outside of those 4 buses and inside of the 4 buses. I couldn't tell you how many times when I was driving the bus, things were happening. Police will stop the traffic, but they'll let the bus go. And I'm like looking at the police officer, he's on the goddamn bus. I think also the police should have liaison with TCD. Whenever time when somebody buys a bike, cars, it should be liaison with the police to let them know individuals have sold their car. Now they now have this car. Police needs to have a more active role on what goes on in Bermuda when it comes to vehicles. Remember, everything's a privilege in this country. Everything is a privilege. That leads me to say that I lived in New York for a number of years. I was there a witness when Rudolph Giuliani cleaned up New York. Now, when Rudolph Giuliani cleaned up New York, why can't we clean up Bermuda? Inconvenience people. When you go in a neighborhood, shut it down. Remember, grandmas were Facebooks way back in the 1960s and 70s before Facebook came out. People knows what goes on in the neighborhoods. Inconvenience people. People's got to catch a flight. You're not catching it today unless you tell me something. Inconvenience people. Search everybody, go back to the time, searching people coming back into your airport. You all remember that? We could do it again. These are things that needs to be done. You always hear about stuff coming in people's suitcases. Well, hey, I remember catching a flight back home. I knew I was going to be at the airport 3 hours if I had to. You got to get back to those things, guys. Don't worry about what Bermudians have to say. You got to do what you got to do in order to serve crime. Stop the crime, I mean. Insurance companies. I would like to see insurance companies come together, buy these buildings, these properties that's all in Hamilton. You got people that's coming to Bermuda, these expats that's used to city living. If the insurance companies buy these properties, build these buildings, make these apartments for their staff, the people that work for them, that will help the Bermudians with low-income housing. It's crazy out there right now, you guys. People now are taking 1-bedroom apartments, studio apartments, husband and wives with children, doing the best that they can. But I think that if the insurance companies play a role in doing that, grandmas can be back home looking after their grandbabies. We have to try and do something here. We know we have to do our best. People look at me because I'm an openly gay man that I can't do this and I can't do that. Well, let me tell you a story real quick. Long story short, my nephew was sitting on the wall one day. I was driving the bus. I didn't like what I saw. He was at the age 13 years old where it was crossroads with him. I stopped the bus in the middle of the street. I was doing a 5-hour tour. I said, get your ass on this bus. I said, let me tell you, I'm okay. I said, get your ass on this bus. You're going to smile, and you're going to say nothing until we get to town.
Did you make him pay for the tour?
Listen, he paid many ways, right? I said, I can save you, but I can't save your friends. My nephew today, now an actuary.
That's the village, right?
Where I did what I had to do as his uncle, and I saved my nephew.
That's what the village
From
looks like.
Somerset, right? So all this shit, excuse me, I'm sorry, all this stuff about, families, you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta save your niece, you gotta save your nephew. We have to come together as a family. You have to do what you gotta do. You don't know what your children are doing. I was in Somerset the other day at a funeral. One of the matriarchs of Somerset died. And I'm standing there, I'm looking at the graveyard, and I'm looking around all the leading matriarchs of Somerset. Leading matriarchs of Somerset, men and women. And I'm like, oh my God, some of the grandchildren causing chaos and mayhem in the same time. So what I'm saying is, you all, we have to do what we have to do for ourselves. This is a black problem. We have to do what we have to do for ourselves. But at the end of the day, government also has to put things in place to make homes affordable for people to live in for our country. I mean, it's ridiculous. People's paying $3,000 a month for rent. People's got to make a choice of whether I buy food or take care of the children or whatever. That's why the children are going mayhem. Because parents are making, 2 and 3 jobs a day, and with children out there doing whatever.
Okay, sir.
Insurance companies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very common sense suggestions. Thank you. I'm going to speak to the paddy wagon thing.
We do liaise with TCD, so every time there's a change of vehicles, we know because we have access to those systems. In terms of paddy wagons, ironically, we've actually just purchased a couple of paddy wagons that'll be here in the new year because we recognize that when we did patrol like that, it had an impact on individuals, and we want to get back to that kind of enforcement. You mentioned when Giuliani cleaned up New York, they referred to that as CompStat and the broken windows theories. One of the things about that particular effort that was made in New York, and it was because I was way back before in the 90s, before that happened. And if you were in that, where you saw guys doing dice and cards, and then there was a cop on every junction.
Yeah.
Right? And so it went from not seeing that to a cop on every junction. So that, that definitely has a cost. Our numbers are down. Our numbers are going to get back up. Not CompStat levels of numbers, but our numbers are going to get back up, and we're going to be much more visible as that happens. So thank you for your comments.
Yes, you actually say?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thanks for the contributions. I thought that one of the remarks you mentioned about inconveniencing people, and whether it's those measures, airports or others, but it triggers in me, there's a philosophical and there's also a practical issue about this, because as a community and a society, there's always a balance to be struck between things like freedom of movement, privacy rights, efficiency in moving through airports, the fact that you feel a presence of a police officer and authority figures in your communities, in the sense of, the state interfering with the ability to go about your normal business. And there's a spectrum. So at one end, you can have all complete freedom, say what you want, move what you want, and do anything, but there is often then people can exploit it. So in this kind of discussion, it's actually really interesting to feel what people, innocent, law-abiding citizens are prepared to put up with for the benefits of wider society. And it might well be inconvenience, you describe it, or other interferences, what others would describe as privacy rights or others, because these things can be interfered with for the public good. But often it's a kind of a political decision on what laws you pass or what operational tactics the police take, but that listen to the community and where they're at. My sense is At the moment, the pivot is, there's a tolerance for more to be done for inconvenience in order for the better good of the public. But if that's not right, it's worth hearing, because essentially that balance is a really interesting and important message for those in authority to hear about when they're making policy decisions or laws about what interferences or inconveniences the community is prepared to put up with. So if you've got views on that, where people are here to listen to those as well, because these are often choices, they're discretionary where you make those governance decisions. Thank you.
Minister?
Thank you. You hear me? Okay. Yes, I think the comments of Mr. Virgil are very valid. I'm not going to repeat things that the commissioner and the governor said, but I'm here to tell you that the government is looking at various legislation to take a look at, to update laws, whatnot. So we will be seeing a different approach to law enforcement as we go forward. And I'd like to echo the sentiments of the governor. We have to be careful what we ask for, because when we make these changes, there are going to be some inconveniences out there. But I also want to stress that this government is in the process now of making plans to create, I think, upwards of 100, 150 low-cost housing, Deputy, over the next year. Okay, over the next year. So the government hears, and we are definitely putting things in place to do our part. We recognize that the issue that we're facing, why we're here tonight, is not just about enforcement. It's about a combination of things, the socioeconomic, the political, the historical, the cultural. So I think we are looking at the issue in a holistic way. As I mentioned, that there are more than just a national security issue. We talked about the other ministries that's working together. But stay tuned. In the next year, maybe 18 months, we're going to have a lot of low-cost housing. So perhaps that would benefit a lot of the families that's out there struggling right now. Thank you.
Sir?
Yes, good evening. Your Excellency and Commissioner and Minister. Good evening, everyone. I am the proud owner of Legends Bar. My name is Kenny Simmons, and I was there that fateful night. I want to give you a sequence of events, and you could tie it all together. You had two young men last year that got killed at Scour. First thing in the morning, right? Then you had my situation that was maybe like 10:15, maybe 10 o'clock, very early. And then you had the two young men that were taken from us on Cool Street. And then after that, you had my good friend, Janae Marnes, taken from us. That's 7 people gone, whether they're all tied, linked, or whatever. You figure that out. You can all figure that out. This was simply terrorism that happened on this island. Terrorism. In other countries, they have other maybe religious groups or whatever like that causing these type of situations. And again, broad daylight, first thing in the morning, 10 o'clock in the evening. This is how terrorists act. And I also want to say this, right, that the young men and women, if they are involved in it, that are committing this or come from actually good families, people. I'm just telling you what I know. They actually come from good families. There's a kid next door. So I know people are trying to put this on, pin it on maybe single moms or different, these are situations where we've got young men making choices, rather be influenced by social media, and that drill rap, and earning a bar, you see this stuff. I do it like sometimes these people are not as unified or together as you would think they are. You know what I mean? I'm kind of even moving in my mind away from gangs, but more to crews. Because a crew can actually operate in several areas. They can coexist. Say if I'm talking about West, they can coexist, but they can also go down and not be bothered with. And again, you could do all the connections in your head. But at the end of the day, we have to put something in place. And if it infringes on people's human rights and stuff like that, you know, and being impeded on, then we're gonna have to do that. This ain't no game. You know, that night when those guys came up, they didn't care. And I stated the young lady that passed away in my establishment, Jasmine, she invited 20 tourists at my establishment the week before. What if that would have happened, people? If that would have happened? We would have been talking about a whole different thing. Bermuda won the blacklist. And Donald Trump, he's going to say, no, that we can't have this. You know what I mean? It just could have been way worse. And my fear, if we don't get tough and show this, my worry, the next thing is going to be a couple of police officers that go. My father was a police officer here in Western Division. And that's my worry. Police officers or some little kids that get killed in this. That is my worry. So we have to put something in place that's going to storm this mindset, shake them up, where God can say, hey, look, man, I'm not getting involved in this type of lifestyle. I don't need this, sir. And I want to say to everyone, government, you guys are actually doing a good job in running this country. My hat goes off to you guys. You're doing the best you can in what you're working with. You understand? But, you know, we just have to make a stand somewhere. Because I love this country like everybody in this room. We all love this country, and we just got to create something that puts fear in these guys. That was a scary night for me, and I just felt like it was people that didn't care or whatever, not unless they have another answer. You see what's going on in El Salvador? That man's cleaned that country up. No nonsense, it's just cleaned it up. But anyway, man, I just want to thank you for this, guys, for doing this town hall. Thank you again for this time.
Thank you very much, Brian. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm hearing tonight that basically, how do we deter these youth, grown men, children, from what I've seen and heard? How do we do that? I'm going to ask a few questions. One, what does the taxpayer pay for when somebody commit a crime, shooting, killing, raping, whatever that is, to go up to casemates or wherever up in Somerset? I feel that we should really look at how do we address these type of crimes. It's not going to happen here. We have to deter these young women, men, whoever they are. Don't put them up in Somerset. Find somewhere. The cost, I'm so sure that what we pay here, which I don't know, let's say it's $50, I'm just doing a number, and you want to send them down to the UK or somewhere else in the Caribbean, somewhere else, which they have no interconnection with their friends, their family, or none of that. In my opinion, that will break it, because nobody wants to go down there and have to poop in one toilet, no TV, and going outside with a sledgehammer to hit a piece of rock. That it. Ain't not gonna happen. You have to deter the mentality. And these gangs or crews or whatever's out there are recruiting young people. That's what they're doing. So we have to save those young people, and if you put the fear of God in them, they will scream and say, hey, no, it was David Green who recruited me, or Zandy Silva, or Pastor Leroy, or somebody. You have to break the mental part of this and put the fear of God in them, and that's how I believe you'll get the country back there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay,
Corin.
good evening. Good evening, everyone. Your Excellency, Minister, Commissioner, Moderator, community. My name is Corin Smith. I'm here as a member of the Imperial Group. Very honored and humbled to be working with my partners, Gladwin Simmons and Eugene Dean. Tonight, I speak from lived history, from decades of frontline experience with the very youth who later formed the core of Bermuda's gang crisis, now being called terrorists. Teenagers in the 90s, when they were being recruited, because black men have always been a problem, according to our own narrative. These young men did not appear suddenly. The roots trace back a full generation. In the 1990s, many of these same young men were mobilized politically, leading into the 1998 election. They showed up, they participated, they supported the transition to black majority leadership. But once the victory was secured, they were sidelined. Their realities were ignored, their needs were unaddressed, and the social conditions around them continued to deteriorate. The situation became so serious that government commissioned a study on black males. That study ultimately confirmed rising hostility, mistrust, and disillusionment among young black men. And it was buried because it was politically inconvenient. Meanwhile, in 2004, those closest to the ground saw the danger clearly. Warnings were relayed by our team members directly to leadership. Quote, "The conditions among the hardcore element are becoming explosive," end quote. Shortly after, the Wellington Oval fracas confirmed this truth in 2004. A presentation was then made at the cabinet level, and leadership acknowledged the accuracy and urgency of the assessment. But despite the recognition, no meaningful collaboration followed. No sustained partnership, no long-term structural intervention. Instead, Bermuda was offered lip service, fragmented programs, and superficial alternatives that lacked hardcore credibility and cultural understanding. And because these issues remained unaddressed, the predictable happened. Bermuda entered the era of gun violence. 20 years later, we are still dealing with the same root causes that were clearly identified long before the first shots were fired. Tonight is not about blame, it is about truth. It's about acknowledging the foundation so that real solutions can finally be built. I'm pleased to pass the mic to my partner and big brother from another mother, Gladwin Simmons, who will now show how the lived history you just heard aligns with 17 years of public statements from our nation's leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Corin.
Good night, Bermuda. I think it's important to, first and foremost, acknowledge the people whose shoulders we all stand on. Our honorables, Weeks, Excellency Murdoch, and the Commissioner of Police. All right? I likewise applaud what's being manifest forward. And gangs are polarized. Parties are polarized, right? Ordinary people are polarized. Conflict is embedded within the human DNA, okay? I made the point to my team, who I really enjoy working with because they're serious people, that if you have three well-evolved youths, just like someone said, a lot of people come from good families, all right? And you put them in a room with 100 toys unsupervised, and you see these well-adjusted three youths from good families fighting over one toy and there's 99 toys there. This suggests that leadership is essential. Supervision is essential. Now, my partner, Corin, gave a bit of history, all right? You know, when you point out that almost exclusively all the murders are black males, not white males. In fact, black males are not even shooting at white males. And white males are most certainly not shooting at black males. So it is a black issue, okay? I've had a son that's been shot, but we ain't gonna get into that. So I know what it feels like. Veeks knows me very well. Now, we have a lot we can do, but we really ain't working together, okay, for political reasons. We need to grow beyond that, okay, particularly the people that are in power. Because the people that's in power, like first and foremost, I'm first responsible for setting the example, not the people that ain't, okay? We could have long nipped this thing in the bud if we were working with people that we know have the proximity. I know your son, Zorro, and I know all of that very well. Quentin and all the boys, both in time. My brethren, Leroy Pastor Bean, you guys are tight. He knows the political vibe. Dale Butler. I was the first to show the PLP that what we are experiencing now was coming before it happened. Dale was her. He was in cabinet, along with Ashton DeVan. That's when Jennifer Smith was in party, right? I came and I said, yo, things are about to jump off of our black youths. People didn't have a clue, okay? And now we're generational, all right? This is great that we can actually bring people together. I'm impressed because, as you all are saying, it's a clear indication that people are concerned, very concerned, but it's a lot you all don't know. You know, I mean, I come from the street, okay? I'm in Supreme Court, I'm in a heroin addict, right? I know the street. My youth's been shot. You know, I'm very close to all of this here. So I'm saying that it's not like we don't have what it takes. We're just not embracing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I clearly wasn't intending to speak, so I had to make some notes as I'm listening. I have a lot of questions, but this tonight is not about that, so I'll catch up with you all later about my questions, especially because I was analyzing a lot of the stuff that you had. So a couple of suggestions I'm going to make, if not already. When I was coming up, you had the police training right in the school when we were 14, 15, as a part of recruitment. If you don't have that, the fact that you let them stay in school 2 extra years, which I'm not quite sure what that's all about yet, I would think we would be able to do something about the recruitment from a school level. We're talking about signature schools, trades. Why aren't we having this? We're looking for police. We're trying to hire police. And not only from the policing, you had up statistics about the FIA, which is financial crime, which is a big part of my background, working for the IMF, being a regulator, training the actual first FIA and speaking to the Egmont that first came to Bermuda Police before you were. These types of training are available in concert with Bermuda College. They're not pushed anymore. While these lot are in school, these are things that we could be doing right now, adding to the school. And I've had people ask me in the schools, can they do that simultaneously, training them, letting them get their certifications, which actually bring them at master's level before they even come out of high school and into these IB jobs, talking about poverty and things like that, bringing their salaries up. Another thing that I would like to say is earlier this year, if not last year, I lose track of time, Bermuda College, through the new head there, he did a community involvement. If you haven't gotten the information from that, I would strongly suggest it. They had groups of 11 tables, financial, on crime, on the economy, on killings, all different things, and they kept a record of that, suggestions. They were very, very good. And what I found really interesting, because you had to move around each table, was there were specific people there who were speaking to their experience, like the gentleman who just had, who actually knew, not people like me who have no real contact about what's really going on as far as crime is concerned. They had crime in their family, drugs, all of that right in their family. So I would really suggest that that's some data that's available to you. Can I read my own writing from here? Again, numbers. I think there's a bit of cynicism about, and I'm really glad to see the number of men here. I always hear you can't get Bermudian young boys because they can't pass the drug test. Not true. And I'll take that up with you personally afterwards for specific things. What else do we have here? Judicial calendar. I hear you talk about you're going to be passing laws. To the extent that the judicial calendar normally runs about 3 years in Bermuda before you even get on the slate. I don't know to what timetable we can, but if things are of the essence, that they move up in the calendar, and who actually is drafting that. Because a lot of times I find that things are drafted, but they're not drafted with professionals who's been in the industry for so long. So in my industry, we actually use the lawyers who have been in practice for 10, 20, 30 years, and we offer our time for free so that you do the actual drafting properly and easily. And I see a lot of legislation in countries that we don't just, you can kind of yank them and adapt them much quicker than actually coming up with the, and then I think prisons is my last thing. And it's nice to see Mr. Lamb, if I remember correctly, used to be one of the prison commissioners.
Corrections Commissioner.
I'd like to think like the gentleman there that I'd like to see a prison. I think it was David that sat there as a deterrent. But in any event, we won't get politically correct on names. My point is that on the slide, there was quite a bit of information about the police units and the information and what they bring together. There's a lot of information within the prison system, within the gangs, which is why I take to David's point about, I don't know if you can actually do that, the legalities of moving them to another country, but a lot of this gang-related communications happen still while they're in prison.
That is correct.
And a lot of them don't have the programs that were in place when you were there.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. I think I owe it to the audience just to clarify a number of points you made, particularly around legislation. I just want to say that the Attorney General's Chambers has a whole section of drafters. Allow me, who are highly competent and highly professional and very skilled, who draft legislation every day of the week. And it doesn't take 3 years for, pardon?
She still makes the
No, I'm only clarifying that it doesn't take 3 years. Oh, wow, okay. No, it doesn't. But my point is that a minister can bring forward a piece of legislation and be done in this session of the House. It doesn't take 3 years to enact or amend a piece of legislation. I'm just clarifying that. But maybe I missed your point. You said a 3-year cycle, and I'm saying it doesn't take 3 years to enact or amend a piece of legislation. Brother Eugene.
Yes.
Greetings.
Greetings, Your Excellency, Minister Weeks, Commissioner. Greetings, everyone. Tonight I wrote what I had to say so we don't get any entanglement about timelines.
But you see, I've been very generous tonight.
You've been very generous tonight.
Reading the room.
Well,
Carry on, my brother. Carry on.
So my partners came up and spoke. I'm also from the Imperial Group. And, you know, Gladwin was saying that the capacity to address this exists. It's just about how we align and work together. So I just wanted to speak a bit about our model and what we see as a way forward, you know. So our whole model is designed to bring together all the things that everyone's been talking about tonight, you know, the national call for collaboration, all the historical truths, all the data and things that's there. But somehow we need to turn that into like a real practical, coordinated and measurable system. And these are the 3 pillars that we see that standing on. One, you need to address family stability and parental accountability. We need a lot of parental support and coaching, comprehensive services for high-risk households, crisis intervention teams, behavioral and developmental support pathways. This directly aligns with all the calls I'm hearing from everyone in front of us and from the community at large. The next thing is we need to mobilize the community, and we have to engage the youth. What I notice is that as the problems increase, as a community, we were distancing ourselves more and more from our young people rather than engaging them. We have to rebuild the trust that's eroded over decades. We need community intervention hubs, train credible community mentors. We used to just grow these people, but now we actually have to train people. We've fallen out of touch with a lot of these things that really were pillars in our community. But we need more mentors. We need culturally relevant engagement strategies. These are ongoing structures that we sorely need. The last thing is that we need the whole society collaborating together. National unity. Everyone, police, schools, churches, agencies, families, private sector, all working from one framework, one timeline, one set of indicators, one national prevention roadmap. This creates an ecosystem that Bermuda has been calling for since 2008. So what do we need from the governor and the commissioner? We're not here asking for money. There's enough money in this country. If we can work together, we can access it and use it to address our needs. We need a public endorsement, confirming that community-driven prevention is essential and aligned with the National Violence Reduction Strategy. We need formal collaboration pathways with the police, not operational policing, but coordinated prevention touchpoints, shared indicators, and youth engagement referrals. We need integration into the existing national strategy as grassroots community people, ensuring that families, agencies, police, and communities operate as a unified system rather than isolated parts. Tonight is an opportunity to see a shift Bermuda from statements to systems, from crisis response to prevention. We have to get ahead of this. From fragmentation to national alignment. We have to bring the country together. We are here, we're ready to work, hand in hand with the government, with the police, with the community at large to address these things. We have the capacity. The people are here on the ground. We just need to be able to work together. And with that said, our mantra is unity in the community, worldwide, fighting with peace and not for it. Give thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brad. Mr. Hunt.
Good evening, panel. You may not know me, but my name is Nelson Hunt. I think what we need to do is teach these children to have value, that they have value. Right now, they have no value. That's what they're made to believe. I employ a lot of people, right? And they come, they're broken when they get there. You have to teach them, to bring them up. These are children that have slept in cars. How do you expect for them to act any different than what they are? They go where they find love, right? They go where they can find camaraderie, and if that's a gang culture, then that's where they're going to be. How do you go to the Bermuda College and you finish and they tell you you're going to be an apprentice? You're 26 years old, you're getting ready to get married, you're still an apprentice? I have no education, but you can't tell me that I have no value. the Morgan's Point, I put it together. Southwest, I put it together. And do you know, I have never been invited to a hotel, the meetings of the hotel commission or anything like that. How do you, look, the kids have nothing to aspire to. You have to find a way to bring up the value. Otherwise, you know, I feel what they feel. Because I come from a poor family. But I have value. You cast them out. Until we can establish that, we're going to have a real problem on the hands. 5 people sleeping in one bedroom if they can get an apartment. They're sleeping up in cars up on the property that I own. I can build 250-room mixed-use apartments. We have the permission since 2009. Can we get it across to the housing? No. Look, I'm going 80 years old. Is it going to happen in my lifetime? These guys are a bunch of jokers. What I figured, I figured it out already. Black people don't have the ideas. That's why we're left behind. But they can't tell me that because I know that I have value. We can turn this situation around. Give them the housing that they need. We have the solution. Will they pay attention to me? I doubt it. Look, I can be just like the gang members. I feel that way sometimes. The best ideas have been turned down. You look at me. Supermarkets I owned. A rum store I owned. I ran barges. All those things. And I've never been called to a meeting yet. I didn't feel left out, you know. I just want to know how blind are these people? What are black people got to do to be a part of the country? I've been to the top and to the bottom. I prefer to be like I dress like I am now because I feel what the people feel. And I didn't see any end to it unless you can instill the children have value. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Nelson. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Just say I always ask about you.
Yeah. Mr. Butler?
To the distinguished panel, the 3 musketeers, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot even get rid of wild chickens in this country, and you're attempting to deal with this massive problem. Unbelievable. And we get 3 minutes tonight. There is a history behind all of this. You can read it in Larry Scott's book, It's Only 4%. Gladwin, Simmons, Corey, Mr. Dean, Ross McCall have been presenting ideas for years that were ignored. Dr. Hudson and I wrote about issues ignored. Tonight, number 1, you should have someone here who hands every speaker a paper to write down their name, address, and phone number, because in them is much more than 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Come on. The old style, you have your say and go home. Give them a paper, call them in your office, and you spend maybe a day or two to get it all out of them if you're serious. Number 2, polarization came up, a big issue. The breakdown of silos mentioned, big issue. We need a shift, big issue. Therefore, if you're serious, the government, led by the governor, would immediately make a constitutional change that states very clearly to the rest of the world that at least 3 issues during a parliamentary session must be agreed to that will be worked on by both parties. Because the PLP says left, the OBA say right. The OBA say right, the PLP say left. As one person mentioned, this is a very small country, and we shouldn't have to deal with that. So gun violence would be one thing that both parties work on, housing would be another, and education. I would do something rather that drastic. I cut out all government trips for 9 months. You're not going anywhere if you're really serious about the people. That money's going to stay here. You read the minutes. Read the minutes. You're going to have to, you'll send a message to all those countries in the West Indies that have been dealing with this problem for a very long time and have not made any progress. They'll say, my goodness, where's Bermuda? We're going to stay here and deal with our people and use that money in that regard. I would question your statistics, Commissioner, because that needs to be looked at too, because in 2000 we had more people, so more crime, but got fewer people now. Come on, think that through. 2, if you were 25 years of age in the year 2000, 25 years later, are you still going to be stealing mobilettes at 50? You're 25, you do that. But not at the age of 50. Those statistics are a waste of time. Sorry, get rid of them. And that's why your police numbers even went down. But if you say you need them, the government will make a decision. But there are a lot more constructive ideas that people have been talking about for a long time. To hear Glad Simmons for over 30 years talk about unity in the community, and we had it, and now we've lost it. We cannot turn back the clock. We can only move forward with constructive ideas, which would have started tonight by you ensuring that you got the name and number of everyone who spoke so that they would have more time to explore their ideas. Thank you. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Mr. Fabler.
Right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Glenn Fabler. Not Dale Butler. Dale's my cousin. He just sat down. He's a little upset tonight, but he got that off his chest. And I'm going to just share a few ideas that I have with reference to our challenge. Just to say, though, that what we hear from the floor is that concern that here we are in 2025, and while we know that Bermuda, our island, our little island, isolated as it is, we're 800 miles from anywhere. We're 800 miles, we're out here by ourselves. But one thing, most of you have been in a boat, but when we get in a boat, a lot of times we're there together, and the boat actually helps to foster something called community. I know we use that term community a lot, but right now, here we are, 2025, a lot of our community, we see through our cell phones, we see through all sorts of video screens, we see through something that actually is pushing us apart. How many of us know our neighbors, as a case in point? How many of us know all the neighbors, like, let's say, within 100 yards of our houses? Those are the things. We use the term community. Actually, the term, like any language, is variable. But when the true meaning of community is the same community that people like JC was talking about, Jesus Christ was talking about, real community. And that's what we're called to do. In other words, the challenges that we have are not isolated to Bermuda, even though we're out there by ourselves. We can talk about different places. Somebody mentioned New York City. But we don't want to repeat or use that as an example. we have something here amongst ourselves, this thing about community. How do we reconstruct, how do we reinvigorate our sense of community? That's the question that's before us. And we do that when we recognize that we all, I think in Brother Nelson's piece, we all have value. We are all valuable, each of us. And those guys up at Westgate too. I go up Westgate every once a month. Myself and a few other people. And they value, and in fact, it's one of the things that motivates me. I see in those, we just get together informally. And we just bounce some ideas off, but I see a certain value in all those guys. I think it's about maybe 150 guys up there right now. So when we remember who we are, remember right now, 2025, Bermuda's much different than it was 25 years ago. We had a change, and I heard the minister mention about a shift in culture. Our culture has shifted because of economics. That when I was coming up, or even by the time I went away to school, we had a burgeoning hospitality industry, which is a different structure than what we have now. And we're glad that we have the financial sector as it is, because if we didn't have that, we might not have much at all. But remember when we had the hospitality economy, it was easier to get together. Everybody could get a job in a hotel. Everybody could get a job in a hotel. But we lost that for a number, outside of ourselves, we lost that. And so we have a different, and so those boys, those young men, and even myself, I went on, went on to this tertiary degree, but I'm not too sure if I was coming up now, if I wanted to work in the financial sector. There's a cultural issue there. So, but this is what we have. But the other thing that we do have is that we know each other. We know each other. And if I might ask, just for a favor from the MC, just before we leave, could we ask each other, or ask all of us, to meet one person that we don't know before we came in the meeting? And that's how we begin to re-establish. You did that?
You just did.
Okay, right. So before we leave, thank you. Before we leave, let's meet one person, just one, that we don't know. And that's how we build community. That's what we're called to do, to build community. And we have a history. We have a history of this. And I'm glad we're meeting here in Southampton, Glebe. Right? Very near. Dr. Neatok, I'm sorry. But we actually, just near here, is where 80 years ago, some men saw a challenge because Bermuda was changing. Right over here on the naval annex. And people like Minister Wilson's grandfather, Austin Wilson, and a few others got together and said, oh, look, we got a challenge. This community's got a challenge. They got together, but they had the idea that, well, we're going to start a union, but just a union of NOB. They had a wise man in the West named Mr. Can, Dr. Can, Eustace. He said, no, let's widen it. And that's what I hear coming up from the floor tonight, is that let's not just be in our silo up here. Let's recognize that we need a Bermuda Workers Association. So out of that suggestion, they created the Bermuda Workers Association. Then that became the BIU. And that social movement helped to transform a very backward Bermuda, very backward, and we enjoy those benefits today. So that vision, in other words, what we need to do is reignite our vision to include everybody in that vision. And in including everybody, we know we have to work together. And I've already approached the minister. We're going to be working on something very soon. And we need to be working, Brother Glad, I've worked with Brother Glad, unity in the community. I've worked with many people in this space here. And so even though I don't come from the West End right now, but just one island, one love. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Ms. Horton, you have the mic.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, panel and everyone else. I just want to say that I have heard enough solutions tonight, and I like this mic. This mic over here has been very powerful tonight. And so I would hope that we would find these gentlemen who have spoken tonight, put them in a room, and let's work this out. I mean, we have people amongst us. I too work with Glenn all the time. We have to, and I mean, many of us are educators who are not listened to anymore. You know, our date has gone by, the government feels. You know, the sell by date. So, you know, that's one of the issues we have today. And I mean, I look at the problems with public education. What a mess. But we went to Australia to find solutions. And many $1 million later, we're trying to refix it. You know, we've talked about that from day one, but we're not listened to. So I'm hopeful that you listen to these gentlemen tonight, put them all in a room, you know, the Nelson Hunts and the Eugene Deans, and there are others amongst us who can get together and fix this thing. And we all have families. You know, I'm from Somerset. When our children do wrong, we deal with them. But as a young person, my neighbor dealt with me too. You know, today, we just not doing what we should be doing. But the families are a mess. The families are a mess for the real reasons they talked about. We don't have homes to live in, where, you know, I'm reading where an 80-year-old man and a 70-some-year-old woman are living in a car. Come on. This is ridiculous. I think of our people who live in that god-awful place in St. David's.
No.
But you know the place I'm talking about in St. David's.
All I heard was St. David's.
I'm not talking about St. David's.
But I agree.
On the former base.
Yeah, I agree.
That place needs to have been fixed many moons ago. I have gone in there to teach young people, you know, who for some reason or other couldn't come to school, and I've gone into there to teach people. My heart aches. My heart aches for every family who lives in there. And the rest of us are like, I was thankful for Dale saying, stay home, because I think of every time we travel with an entourage. There you go. And you know we don't travel in the back of the plane. So think of the amount of money we could have put into this community. And my heart aches for my people. And you know, I do what I can, or what I'm allowed to do. Get a lot of flack for doing that. Reach a smile, you know what I'm talking about. So, you know, we really have to be very serious if we want to fix it. And we're going to have to include all of us. And, you know, some of us can still help with the school system. You know, some of us can still help with families. And we're willing. And, you know, thank heavens we still have this, because a lot of us don't. And, you know, so while we're able, take advantage. We don't even charge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Horton. Rest okay for now. See you wearing the shirt.
I'm sorry, I'm not as tall as Ms. Horton. Good evening. My name is Tiffany Thomas. I am the founder of Transitional Community Services, which is a registered charity that was founded to meet the needs. Thank you, Mr. Dean. that was founded to meet the needs of at-risk young men 18 to 34. And I share that because two things that make our program very unique is one, every young man that is a part of our program is there because he wants to be. It doesn't matter if he came from corrections. It doesn't matter if he was referred through the court system. It doesn't really matter if he was referred from school, family, wherever. At some point in his journey, he has said, yes, I want a part of your program. That's empowering because a lot of times we sit in these spaces and we talk about what these people need, but we don't consult them and ask them, what would help you to feel seen? What would help you to move the dial? Do you even want to change your life? Because that's a conversation worth having as well. Additionally, the other thing that makes our program unique is the fact that we haven't designed a program and expected these young men to fit into the box. We've co-created something that meets the need that they say they have. And so a lot of times I sit in these spaces and sit in these town halls, and as empowering as it is for us, those of us who think that we have amazing ideas, and we do, it's also very disappointing because we're talking about plans and solutions for people who are not in the room. And they're not gonna come in these rooms, so we have to be willing and able to go to them. We have to be willing to go to the bars. We have to be willing to go to the sports clubs. We have to be willing to stand on the block. We have to be willing to walk on Court Street in the wake of a shooting and say, yo, bro, you all right? And actually tell this young man, I see you. Because nobody wants to run for their life every day. Nobody wants to be wondering whether or not they're gonna come home to see their family at the end of the night. And somewhere along the way, we as a community have normalized bad behavior. And in addition to normalizing bad behavior, we've also thrown away a generation of young men. And we have to sit with that. We have to sit with that. Because until we sit with the truth and the reality of who we are as a people, we are not gonna move the dial. We have people in this room who have years and years of wisdom. Ms. Horton, Mr. Butler, former educators. We can't throw that away. There's wisdom in the room. Oftentimes we bring consultants in and we think that because this person has an accent, they're the expert. The answers are in the room. And we as a community need to stand up and take charge of our individual neighborhoods and say enough is enough. That's my spiel. No, suggestions. Sorry, sir, if I have 2 more minutes.
Carry on.
I only have one suggestion because I don't want to run out of time. I have more and I'm happy to share them. So when children are little, right, and we've all experienced it, we see them in nursery. They got the mama, the daddy, the grandpas, the granny, the great-granny, aunties. Everybody's taking the day off for sports day. Everybody's there. Preschool, same thing. Primary school, you start to see the numbers dwindle as they get a little older. Middle school, you see the parental support and the village dwindle as they get older. High school, the same thing. As we start to see these early warning signs when our young people are demonstrating that something is happening, that's when we need to gather our arms around them and give them the support they need. In the educational system, we have paras allocated for young people who have cognitive deficiencies. They need academic support. That model is already tried and tested. Proof of concept is already there. Why not replicate that for young people who are demonstrating behavioral issues? We have one educational specialist per school, one educational therapist, per school, and one educational therapist assistant. But you may have 50 young people who need support. Allocate one person to that young person with a team of support. Parents are at the table and there's a level of accountability. That team follows that young person all the way through. And every person at the table, including the young person, has to come to some agreement on what is gonna happen. We have a tendency to see the smoke, talk about the smoke, ignore the smoke, but rushing when we see the fire. Bermuda is smoldering. We've been smoldering for years. It's high time we start doing things before we see the fire.
Thank you very much. Darrin?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Darrin Woods. I work for the Violence Reduction Team under Pastor Leroy Bean. And tonight, I really just wanted to speak around what we're actually seeing within our young people, what it looks like, what it feels like, and speak to some of the misconceptions that were kind of heard in the room tonight, or just to educate people on what it really is. So as we looked at it, the commissioner in his statement, he spoke about the number of stabbings. I would say that of those 35 stabbings that we had in 2023, 2024, the majority of those stabbings were committed by people under the age of 25 years old. So we're looking at younger and younger people. I would say the youngest of those stabbings would have been around 15 years old, based off of the things that I know from the workforce. So many of those young people that are starting to be involved or are involved in those gangs or are joining or being recruited into these gangs are between the ages, are young people. They're 16 years old, they're 17 years old, they're 18 years old. These are young people, not all who are being kicked out of school and moved out of school. These are some young people who are performing well in school, staying under the radar, not getting into trouble, not getting caught into cycles. It's not like someone pointed out earlier, it's not just those guys who are coming from single parent homes, who are coming from less structured homes. It's as simple as getting caught into an incident in school. I'm from this area, you're from this area, we guys don't like each other, or an incident happens, I'm gonna align myself with this group for my safety and to protect myself, right? So there's a lot of an alignment for safety. My fear in increasing, and what I want to say to the community, if you know young people under the age of 21 years old, once this law gets passed, there are hundreds of young people who are walking around carrying knives. Hundreds of young people who are walking around carrying knives for fear of their lives, for fear of their safety, as a way to protect themselves. We see it all the time, Pastor being correct. There's hundreds of kids that are walking around carrying knives. So we need to get that message out of talking to those young people as to why you're carrying knives. Why don't you feel safe? Let's get into these guys' minds. Let's get into their psyches. I think that they don't really care about jail sentences. They're not really thinking that far ahead. So going to whatever prison in Guantanamo or wherever doesn't really matter, because that's not where their mind is at or where their thoughts are at that point in time. They're not thinking that far ahead. They're not that far developed to even be thinking that far ahead. Many of the young people that we see that are actually committing the crimes also have a lot of cognitive challenges and cognitive disability challenges, and are probably, some of them, we've done work with some of the young people, and some of the 18, 19, 20-year-olds that we're working with are reading at a primary 7-year level group. Just some things that we've seen and that I'm just pointing out. I'm also going to say that we're not going to enforce our way out of this problem. This is a community issue. This is a community problem. This is something that we need to take a hold of as a team, as a community, in order to make the changes that we want to see, right? The other piece I'm going to say is that our team, how many people in this room have actually read the violence reduction strategy? Just raise your hand if you've actually read it. Wow. Right, so that's a piece to go take a look. I encourage people to read it. I encourage people to reach out to the Ministry of National Security. Yes, we've been down this path before. Yes, there's been the Minter report. Yes, there's been 10 other reports that are written. But I can speak to say that based off of the work of the National Violence Reduction Strategy and the Gang Violence Reduction Team, we are doing a lot of positive things in our community, and we're working with a lot of young people and creating change within their lives. I won't go into every single program and all the data and all those things. I'm happy to take a call or sit down with people afterwards, but I'm not going to go into all of that. What I am going to go on is that the community needs leadership. And so we need to take accountability in our own areas. Kind of what Tiffany just said is we need to look at, like, as a community, what can we be doing for ourselves and stop fully relying on the government to fix all of our problems, right? These small things can make a big difference. We're talking about teachers and former educators. Start a mentorship group for your local football club. Start a group where you're teaching, you're going after school, and we're at a football program. Start a homework program with the football club. Like, let's think of outside weird things outside of the box in order to help to support our young people. Areas of need, men's groups, mothers groups, We lost a lot of the youth groups and that used to be held by the churches. A lot of them don't really exist anymore. Youth groups, positive spaces with intentional, real conversations with our young people. Those are some of the things that I see that I know are needed. I think that each of us need to really take our time and effort and invest back into our community. The worry that I see here is that there's nobody, maybe one, maybe two people under the age of 30 in this space. None. One. There's only one person under the age of 30 in this space. And so we need to have that gap where we engage with the young people under 30, the young people under 40. They need to come back and they need to join these conversations because they're the ones that can also relate and play a major part in working with our young people. That's all I say tonight.
Thank you very much. And if I document that has 8 objectives and goals, and we invite you to read through it and see some very actionable goals and aims and objectives, which really target a lot of the things we've discussed here at this town hall, as well as the other town halls we've had. Pastor Bean.
Thank you. Good evening to all. I can't really say much after my colleague just put everything on the level. But I will say that one of the issues that we need to address is transgenerational trauma. Sometimes we talk about a lot of solutions and we never deal with the root cause. And, when we look at certain people that are involved, many times we want to be seen from the outside. But when we don't address that root cause, no matter who you lock up, no matter what prison you send them to, it will repeat itself. Ecologists just say, wait, you take a plant out, something else will grow there. And so we need to get into the minds to start to change that mindset. And we need to be in agreement ourselves. Anytime we have differences of philosophical belief systems, that's where wars begin. You can't come in sometimes with your own belief and your own idea when we're sitting down. We need to come in for the best of addressing certain things together. And I believe that our community has been divided and splintered for so long because everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to have something to say. But if we started to deal with the root causes that has caused this here and we came with the same common denominator, many of this stuff, we can get rid of it. It's okay to talk about, this and that. But what happens tomorrow? When those young men come out of prison, or when those young men that were sent to another place, or those young women, what happens? Do you think that for 1 minute, when we lock them up, that someone else within a minute will not rise up? That's a fact. I see it every day. You can put someone away, and in that same neighborhood, someone will rise back up. So we're going to come together. It's not about just the programs, because we have a lot of programs. And as my colleague said, we see almost close to 12 to 1,500 people a month, constantly doing check-ins, constantly doing interventions, constantly setting up programs, work programs, whether it be the IAM program or the work placement program or the redemption farm. We set up programs regular, or the programs in the prisons. There are tons of programs. But programs are not going to save us if we don't deal with the root cause. We must, as a community, come together and start to look at it. I heard Ms. Horton talk about the education system. There was something that happened, and just 1 second, P.S., well, I know I'm running up to my 3 minutes.
Carry on, man.
But something that happened just about a couple weeks ago. I done an interview with someone. And what happened is they said that I was promoting independence will stop gang violence. That was not the case. The person really never read the book that I wrote. And then on the page 36, we talked about a model that was set up in certain countries. And one of them was dealing with education when it came to Switzerland and Norway and Austria. As a matter of fact, what I was saying in the interview is that in those countries, they're considered the most peaceful countries because the concept that they used within the countries was a concept that promoted peace. So that welfare concept, that concept of meeting the general need, they found that people didn't have to go out and participate in crime. They didn't have to go out and do certain things. Because why? The concept took care of the basic need. So we need to look at it. I heard the gentleman, I believe is gone, he talked about dealing with a fund. You know, the truth of the matter is, if we're going to start to see something happen in Bermuda, we're going to have to form a concept that everyone can benefit from it. Everyone. So I'm saying, as a community, we go out all the time, every day. Late last night, I was just walking in the woods right in town, right down the bottom. And I ain't got to call no names. If we are serious, because when I'm out on gang, when somebody gets killed, I don't see hardly anybody around the room. I hear a lot of you talking. But I don't see many of you. But you're welcome. I'm giving you a personal welcome today to come out if you really want to help the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Dean. My brother, and you're going to have to be the last speaker, but go ahead.
No, yeah. I just wanted to say one thing just to follow up, and
sure.
And very good point, Pastor Bean, and the brother here, and the teacher, right? We're talking about a subject that's not in the room. So how we get them in the room? Who's going to get them in the room? Right? So we could talk, but we need action.
Yeah, fair.
So I'm going to tell you about two things that are happening. Right? Saturday, we got Riza Islam. Right? Riza Islam's an internationally known activist. Comes out of the Nation of Islam. He's coming to the island. And it's going to be at Cedar Bridge. Early warned by Soldier One. And the topic is reclaiming our power, rebuilding our community. And everybody here is invited to support that. The Imperial Group's doing a whole forum series, starting from Saturday all the way to Thanksgiving.
And every day touching on young people. Topics. This is targeting young people? Just
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is definitely targeting young people. So, and then the next day on Sunday at Botanical Gardens is the Living Green Expo. Right, talking about natural living, sustainable living. Why do we need that? Right? In 50 years, we went from being food secure to food insecure. Right? I'm watching medical supply places building empires. Doctors' offices growing bigger. What that mean? Our communities getting sicker. Right? Not better. We have no control over what's in our food. You got to worry about GMO and all sorts of types of chemicals in your food because we're not growing our own food. We lost touch with a lot of things that gave us strength in our community. And we need to realign with those things. So the expo is to connect us with people who are still upholding those basic principles and can show us how to realign with nature, and realign with sustainability, things that's going to keep our community healthy and moving forward. 10 to 6 at Botanical Gardens on Sunday, 6 p.m. early warm at Cedar Bridge, 7 to 9 is the presentation. Reclaiming our power, rebuilding our communities. Give thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that, man. With that, we're going way past 8 o'clock. I'm going to invite, unless there's anyone who has a burning desire to say something, I'm going to invite the Honorable Minister Michael Weeks to say a few words to end tonight's proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. MC. You've done an excellent job. Before I get started on my remarks, I want to ask someone a question. I'm going to ask everyone a question. If you are a parent, an uncle, an auntie, a godmother, a sister, or a brother, put your hand up. Well, that's the answer, Brother Dean. If you want to get the youth in here, each one should bring one.
Right. Absolutely right, Minister.
Each one's got to bring one. I've said that for the whole 3 town hall meetings. We all have someone that we identify with, and 99% of us in this room right now are black. We know the issue is among our community. So going forward at these town hall meetings and these gatherings, each one, bring one. And that's the way we will get our youth in the room, those that need to be addressed and listened to. Now, having said that, I want to thank everyone. This is the third of our town hall meetings. We had intended to have 3, one centrally, one in the east and one in the west. If we have any more, then obviously we'll let the public know. But as it stands now, this is the third and final in the series of 3 town hall meetings. I'd like to thank His Excellency the Governor for being so gracious and being with us each time. I'd like to thank the Commissioner of Police. Can you give them a round of applause? Our MC.
I've got one question about the town halls. I'm sorry about that. You said it's been 3. So data has been passed backward and forward. Has there been any collection of the data? And is it going to be passed to people that weren't into the town hall meetings? That's all I have.
Well, the data will be collected because that is the reason for our town hall meetings in the first place, was to listen, to get information, to get advice, to get criticisms. At the end of the day, you know, it was going to the country, going to our people that matter, in order for us to come up with a solution as to how we can address this. I've heard a lot of good ideas in all 3 town hall meetings. This last one here, coming from the bishop and his team, very much appreciated because they are our front line. A lot of times they don't get the recognition and the respect that they get because what they do, a lot of it they can't share. So hats off to them. Hats off to everyone that has offered solutions. I'm going to point out someone in particular because she's my niece, Dr. Thomas. I really like your presentation, and I know you are passionate, like so many of us here tonight. So as we close, I just want to say that everyone, the work does not stop tonight. The work continues. Each of us have a role to play, a job to do. Our violence reduction strategy is very much in full flow. So wherever, however we can help, please do. These things are not just about talking. We didn't have these 3 town hall meetings just to hear talk and people vent and the like. We all got to decide how we can help. What is it that we could do? Because not everybody plays striker. Talking to the football enthusiasts. Everyone has a role to play. Everyone has a position on the field. Find your position and let us get this thing done together. So I agree that we don't need a whole lot of foreign consultants. My grandma was my consultant coming up. Yeah. And my mama was the police officer, and my daddy was the commissioner. Yeah. See, we laugh at all those things, but that's where I came up. Yeah. I remember my uncle slapped me upside my head. I said, what happened? Because you talked to your grandma, but this was last week, but I ain't seen you. Yeah, but all that to say is that we have a job to do, and we can do it. These are our children. Let's get out there, let's get involved. You know, as much as we can, let's get involved. And any other comments or advice that you might have, we are all there for anybody to contact us. They'll say, know me? No. I have an open door in the Ministry of National Security. They got something to say, come and say it. If you have advice, come bring it. Because at the end of the day, these are not my children, they're our children. So with those closing remarks, thanks again for coming. And we will collate all the advice and information that we have had over the last couple of weeks. And we will present it to the country in due course. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Travel safely, gentlemen and ladies.
People to meet a person they don't know.
Gene.
Every day.
And we're at the...
I think that's... People asking